Good afternoon. Let's begin the session. Okay, the topic that we're discussing today is reading comprehension. This is our second verbal session. Right? We had our first verbal session where I had discussed an overview of the different exams with respect to the English section, and we had discussed a bit of vocabulary. Right? So we have had our initial session on vocabulary. Today is the first session on reading comprehension. Right? Even those of you who were not there in the first class, doesn't matter. It's a completely new topic that we're beginning with today. Right? So today is a basic introductory session to the concept of reading comprehension. How important reading comprehension is in the context of the exam is something that I touched upon in the previous class. Right? I mentioned that, I discussed that reading comprehension is something that is very, very important from the perspective of the exam. So whatever we are discussing today, right, please understand all of this very well. In case you have a doubt, question, query anywhere, right, please ask. Right, doubt, question, query, you require clarification about something, please ask. Right, I don't mind getting interrupted. Just type it in the chat box. I try to address your query as soon as possible. Right. Okay. Before beginning, as I said, today is just an introduction session to reading comprehension. What we are primarily discussing in today's session are some of the things that you need to keep in mind in order to become an effective reader. In today's session, what we are doing is I'll be mentioning the concepts. Right? I'll be mentioning the concepts. I might not go into a lot of detail into each of those concepts because that is what I'll be doing in the subsequent classes. Right? So essentially today I'm just mentioning what the different things are that you need to keep in mind when it comes to reading comprehension, and in detail we'll take up each one of these in our later sessions. Right? So today is just an orientation session into the concept of reading comprehension. Okay, let's begin. Right? Let's begin. I repeat, at any time doubt, when query got clarification, stop me and ask. Okay. Reading comprehension is basically the concept of an unseen passage. Right? It's basically the concept of an unseen passage where you read the given passage and understand what the author wants to say. Right? You read the given passage and understand what the author wants to say. The second part of this sentence, where I say you try to understand what the author wants to say, this is something very important. Because when we read a given passage, in case of reading comprehension, it is not our personal interpretation that matters. What matters is how well we are able to understand what the author wanted to tell us. Right? So please keep one thing in mind. Reading comprehension is always from the perspective of the person who has written the passage. Right? It is not our individual perspective. It is the perspective of the author that matters. See, the reason for this is very simple. Right? Because if it were to be the individual perspective that mattered, then 10 different candidates would have answered questions in 10 different ways. But as all of you would know, there is only one correct answer to a question, right? And that correct answer is the one that is going to be correct as per the person who has written the passage. Right? So reading comprehension, start to beginning, is from the perspective of the author, right? How we understand it has to be from the perspective of the author. And based on what is comprehended. Right? Based on what is comprehended, questions need to be answered. Right? Based on what is comprehended, questions need to be answered. So this is the basic principle of reading comprehension. Right? It's about an unseen passage, a passage that most likely you haven't read earlier. You read the passage, understand what the author wants to say, and based on what you have comprehended, right, you answer the questions that follow. Right? So this is essentially what reading comprehension is about. Okay. Let's come to the specific concept that we're going to be discussing today. Right? What we're discussing today is techniques to become an effective reader. Right? Techniques to become an effective reader. This is essentially what we are discussing in today's class. Right? What are the various ways by which you can become a better reader? Right? By which you can become an effective reader. Okay. The slide that I'm showing on screen is the same one that I've sent on the WhatsApp groups. Right? You can either access it on the WhatsApp group or you can have a look at the screen, right? I'm displaying it on the screen as well. Okay. As I said, this is what we are discussing today. Right? What is speed reading? Who is an effective reader? In today's class, we'll focus on the second aspect. Right? Who is an effective reader? There are 5 points that we will discuss that differentiate an effective reader from an ineffective reader. Right? Those are the 5 points that we are going to be discussing today. As I said, I'll just be mentioning the concepts in today's class. In our later sessions, we will be taking up these concepts in a lot more detail. But today, as it is the first class on reading comprehension, right, you have to have these concepts clear in your mind, right, as to what these concepts refer to. Okay, so there are 5 concepts that we will be discussing. Okay, let's discuss the first one. Right, let's discuss the first one. The first concept is read for ideas, not for facts. In fact, if I have to put this across in a slightly better way, what I would say is focus more on ideas than on facts. Right? Focus more on ideas than on facts. Let me differentiate between ideas and facts now. An idea generally is the point that the author wants to make. Right? So when I say focus more on ideas, you have to be clear about what I mean by ideas. Right? So an idea generally is the point that the author wants to make. Right? When I say point that the author wants to make, it is the main point or the major point that the author wants to make. Right? So that is what I am calling an idea. Facts generally are used by the author to support his or her point. Right? So this is how I differentiate fact from ideas. Idea is the main or the major point that the author wants to make. Facts are used by the author to support his or her point. Right? So this is how I'm differentiating ideas from facts. Right? So facts will generally make up the supporting details, whereas the idea will be the actual concept that the author wants to put across, right? Or the most important concept that the author wants to put across. So when we read, we try to focus more on ideas than on facts, right? Because the facts are just going to support the ideas that have been given. But the ideas are the primary thing that the author wants to tell us. Right? 10 minutes back, I had mentioned that reading comprehension is all about understanding it from the perspective of the author. So when I talk about the author's perspective is more often than not contained in the ideas. Right? That's why we say focus more on ideas than on facts. Right? Because the perspective of the author gets captured in the ideas. Right? That is where it gets captured. Let's do a small exercise here. Right? Let's do a small exercise here. This paragraph that I'm displaying on the screen, right? I've displayed a paragraph on the screen. It's there in the PPT that I've sent on the group also, right? So you can access it either on the mobile or you can look at it on the screen that I'm displaying. Read this paragraph, right? Read this paragraph. Try to identify which the most important part of the paragraph is. Is it the first part of the paragraph? Is it the central part of the paragraph? Or is it the last part of the paragraph? Right? I repeat, read this paragraph, understand what the author wants to say, and try to identify which part of the paragraph contains the main idea that the author wants to communicate. Right? That is the question here. Right? That is the question here. Which part of the paragraph contains the main idea that the author wants to communicate? Right? Is it the first part, the center part, or the last part? Right? Read it, understand it, and type in the answer in the chat box. Right? Type in the answer in the chat box. Is it the first part, center part, or the last part? Take your time. There's no hurry. Right? Take your time. There's no hurry. But try to identify in which part the main idea of the author lies. The three options are first part of the paragraph, center part of the paragraph, or the last part of the paragraph. Just type it in the chat box. The first part of the paragraph, the center part of the paragraph, or the last part of the paragraph. Where do you see the main idea that the author wants to convey? Sumedh, correct. Steffi, different answer. Shreya, correct. Ujjwal, different answer. Akshit, correct. Okay, in this paragraph, the main idea of the paragraph, right? The main idea of the paragraph is contained in the last part, right? The answer here is the last part. Anubi, correct, right? Good. It is in the last part of the paragraph that the main idea is mentioned. I'll repeat. Whenever I talk about the main idea is always going to be from the perspective of the author who has written this. So I ask myself that if there are 5 or 6 or 7 sentences, which are the 1 or 2 sentences that are the most important, right? So here, the last 2 sentences, right, where it says Mr. Liu's treatment is anything but routine, a sign the authorities are worried. Clearly, Beijing is concerned about what a tragic end for this famous dissident could mean for its international reputation, right? This portion of the paragraph, right, the last 1 or 2 sentences, that is where the main idea is concerned. I'm sorry, is contained, right? And why am I saying that it is in the last part that the main idea is contained? Because if you have a look at this last part, it says clearly Beijing is concerned, right? So when I say clearly Beijing is concerned, it means that whatever is given before this will support the fact that Beijing is concerned, right? So this word clearly indicates that what is given before this is supporting the fact that Beijing is concerned, right? So the main idea over here is coming in the last part of the paragraph. Even those of you who could not identify this, please don't worry. Today is just the first session on reading comprehension, right? And as I said, today I'm just mentioning what the concepts are. In a separate session, right? In a separate reading comprehension session, I will discuss in a lot of detail how to separate facts from ideas. Right? As I said, today is just about learning what the concepts are. So one of the concepts is to differentiate facts from ideas. But how exactly to do this? Right? What are the things that we need to keep in mind? I'll take that up in a separate session. Right? So even those of you who got this wrong, right? Even those of you who got this wrong, please don't worry. We haven't discussed this concept in detail yet, which I'll do in a later class. Right? But for now, as far as this example goes, if you ask me why is it the last part, it is because of the word clearly over here. So what is given before this, right, in the first part of the paragraph or in the center part of the paragraph, supports the fact that Beijing is concerned about what a tragic end could mean for its international reputation. Right? So this is just one example of where we saw whether we could separate the main idea from the fact or not. Half of you are able to do it, half of you are not able to do it, but nonetheless, don't worry, we'll be discussing this in a lot of detail in one of our later sessions. Okay, so the first thing that I've discussed is more on ideas than on facts. Right? I'm sorry, I guess my voice was breaking in between. Right? I'm sorry, there was a connection problem. Focus more on ideas than on facts. So this is the first technique that an effective reader makes use of, right? Utilizes. Now let's come to the second technique. Right? Now let's come to the second technique. As far as possible, right? Please understand this. Right? As far as possible, use a pointer while reading. Right? As far as possible, use a pointer while reading. Some of you would have noticed that when some people read, they have a pen or pencil in hand. Right? And as they read, they trace the sentences using the pen or pencil as a pointer. Right? That is what I mean by using a pointer while reading. Right? I repeat, some people when they read, you would have noticed that they have a pen or pencil in their hand and they use the pen or pencil to trace the sentences as they read, right? So basically what I'm talking about is try to trace the sentences in an underlining motion as you read the text, right? Try to trace the sentences in an underlining motion as you read the text. Please note, you are not actually underlining the text, right? You are not putting the ink on paper, you are not actually underlining the text, but your hand motion is something like an underlining motion. So the sentence that you read, right? The sentence that you read, you try to trace it with a pointer, which could be a pen, pencil, or it could even be a finger, right? But try to trace the sentences as you read the text. This technique, right? This technique over the years has been proven very, very effective. This technique has proven very, very effective. And there has been a lot of research on this technique, right? And for most of the people, this technique has proved very, very effective. This technique, right? The technique of using hand motions helps with both comprehension and speed, right? This technique of using hand motions, then this technique of using a pointer and moving your hand along the sentences that you read, this helps with both comprehension and speed, which are the two major aspects of reading, right? How fast you are able to read, how well you are able to understand, right? So this technique this technique helps with both comprehension and speed. My suggestion is, whenever you get the time, right? Whenever you get the time in Google, right? In Google, look up this person's name, Evelyn Woods, right? Evelyn Woods, right? If I'm not wrong, yes, it's Evelyn Woods or it's Evelyn Wood, one of the two. I think it's Evelyn Woods, right? Look up the name Evelyn Woods in Google. This is the person who came up with this technique of using hand motions, right? Of using pointers as a tool while reading, right? So you'll find an article on the internet, right? The Evelyn Woods story, right? It will be around one and a half odd page. Just go through it. It's very interesting. More than interesting, it's enlightening, right? As to how useful this particular technique can be, right? So wherever possible, please try to employ hand motions. Please try to use a pointer while reading. It helps with both comprehension and speed. Some of you might already be in the habit of utilizing this technique. Some of you might not be. Those of you who are not in the habit of using this technique right now, don't worry, it will take some time, right? It might take a month and a half to get used to this. But it actually makes a difference for most of the people, right? So essentially what I'm saying is this technique is worth giving a shot, right? It's worth giving a shot, this technique of using pointers, right? Nowadays, a lot of exams that you'll take will be computer-based exams, right? They will not be pen and paper exams, right? A lot of exams. Even on a computer, this technique can be employed, right? You can use a pen, you can use a pencil, or you can use a mouse pointer, right? To trace the sentences as you read, right? But please make use of this technique. This technique does help. Okay. Now what we'll do is let's do a regular reading comprehension exercise. Right? Let's do a regular reading comprehension exercise. I'll tell you what needs to be done now. Right? See, this is the point that I was talking about. Right? So this is the second point. Our first point was about focusing on ideas rather than on facts. The second point is using a pointer. Right? So this is what I've discussed in the last 5 to 7 minutes. Okay. Now let's do a regular reading comprehension exercise. Passage 1, right? Passage 1. See, I'll tell you how to attempt this passage, right? Just understand this. Just understand how I want you to go about this exercise. Here it says read the passage in 3 minutes, right? What I suggest is don't do this, right? Don't time yourself. I'm sorry, don't try to finish the passage in 3 minutes, but at the same time, right? But at the same time, see how much time you take to read the passage, right? I repeat, you don't have to read it in 3 minutes, but please see how much time you are taking to read the passage and understanding it, right? So what you can do is you can use your watch or you can use the stopwatch in your mobile, right? Or the timer in your mobile, right? So using a watch, stopwatch or the timer in your mobile, just see how much time you take to read the passage, right? The passage is across 3 or 4 slides here, right? Yes, it's 4 slides. The passage is across 4 slides. So you read the passage, see how much time you take to read the passage, right? Just note that time down. After which you attempt the questions that are there, right? These are the questions. This is question 12, question 13, question 14, question 15, right? Question 16, right? So there are 5 questions here. There are questions 12 to 16. So read the passage, attempt the 5 questions. But I repeat, this time that you are noticing, this time is only to see how much time you take to read the passage. Please do not include the time required to answer the questions, right? Please do not include that time. This time is only for reading the passage, after which you can attempt the questions. Right? Please give this passage a try. Once you are done with the answers, what you can do is you can type in the answers in the chat box and I'll mention whether those are right or not. Right? Just give this passage a try. Please try this passage. I repeat, you don't need to read the passage in 3 minutes. You don't need to answer the questions in 1 minute. Take your time. Only thing is just notice how much time you are taking to read the passage. That is all. Okay? You can start. Once you are done, please type in the answers in the chat box. We'll discuss them. Ritik, correct. The sequence is correct. Akshit, the sequence is correct. Janvi, the sequence is correct. Shreya, sequence correct. Good. Shreya, correct. Question 13. Akshit, correct. Janvi, correct. Question 13. Ritik, correct. Akshit, the third one is correct. Janvi, the first one has a different answer. Second one is correct. Third one is correct. Fourth one has a different answer. The fifth one is correct. Janvi. Ritik, first one correct. Second one correct. Third one correct. Fourth one different answer. Fifth one is correct. Good. Take a few more minutes, all of you will then discuss. Janvi, correct. Ritik, almost correct. Anuvi, correct. The 12th one is correct. Anuvi. 13th is also correct, Anuvi. Shreya, 14th, the first one is correct. The second one is different. Third one is also different. No, I'm sorry. The third one is correct. No, different. Fourth and fifth are correct. Ritika, 12th one is correct. Ritika, again, almost correct. Ritika, 13th is correct. Okay, take 2 more minutes, all of you. We'll then discuss. Ritika, 14th is correct. Good. Janvi, slightly different answer. Okay, let's discuss. Right? All of you, let's discuss. Question 12. Arrange the following events in the correct chronological sequence, right? Starting with the earliest event. The answer here is 4, 2, 1, 3, 5. Right? A lot of you got this correct. Sue and Johnsy start their studio. Mr. Pneumonia visits Johnsy. Doctor warns Sue that Johnsy doesn't have many days left to live. Johnsy laments that there are only 5 leaves left. Sue asks Johnsy not to count the leaves. Right? So 4, 2, 1, 3, 5 is the sequence. Wherever you have a doubt, you don't agree with what I'm saying, you're not convinced with my answer, please stop me, right? Please ask. Okay. Question 13. In what month did Sue and Johnsy start their studio? They started their studio in the month of May. This is there in the first part of the passage. Right? This is there in the first part of the passage. Now, true, false cannot be determined. Right? True, false cannot be determined. Let's discuss this. Right? Some of you came up with the right answers. Right? Some of you got 1 or 2 of these wrong. Right? Let's discuss this. Again, wherever you have a doubt, please ask. Right? Please ask. The first one, Sue and Johnsy are best friends. This cannot be determined. Right? This cannot be determined. They are good friends, yes. right? They're good friends, yes, but whether they are best friends or not, that cannot be determined, right? The passage does not give that information. As I said, reading comprehension is about answering questions from the author's perspective, right? So even if I may think that they are best friends, but if the author has not said that they are best friends, then the answer will be cannot be determined, right? So when I say cannot be determined, I am going as per what the author has written, right? I am not taking into account my opinion, right? In my opinion, they could have been best friends, but the author has not said it, right? So here it is going to be cannot be determined. The next one says John C hates wine. This is false, right? This is false because somewhere in the passage it says that Sue wants to get John C wine. The fact that John C is not well, right, and she wants to get her wine, that means she's trying to cheer her up. And if she is trying to cheer John C up by offering her wine, in that case, I cannot say that John C hates wine, right? So the second one is false. And the second one is false because chances are that John C likes wine. The third one says the doctor is pessimistic about John C's chances of survival. This is absolutely true, right? This is absolutely true. The doctor does not have very high hopes about John C's chances of survival, right? This is absolutely true. In fact, if you look at the question before the last one, right, the doctor wants you that John C doesn't have many days to live, right? So this is given that John C does not have many days to live. So I can clearly say that the doctor is pessimistic, right? What is pessimistic? Pessimistic is when you are negative about a particular situation, right? So the doctor is pessimistic. The doctor is negative about John C's chances of survival. Now, the fourth one. Now, this is an interesting one. Right? Please understand this fourth one. Some of you got it right, some of you got it wrong. Right? Just understand this fourth one. The fourth one says Sue was from California and John C was from Maine. Right? Sue was from California and John C was from Maine. Let's see what the passage says. Right? Let's see what the passage says. The passage says there were two people, right? Sue and John C. One was from Maine, the other was from California. So if I go as per the first paragraph, all the first paragraph is saying is that one was from Maine, the other was from California. As per the first paragraph, I cannot determine who was from Maine and who was from California. Right? So from the first paragraph, the answer is cannot be determined. Right? From the first paragraph, the answer is cannot be determined because it does not clearly say whether Sue was from Maine or John C was from Maine and who was from California. So from the first paragraph, the answer is cannot be determined. But at the same time, right? But at the same time, have a look at this third paragraph. Right? All of you just have a look at the third paragraph. In the third paragraph, it says a mite of a little woman with blood thinned by California zephyrs. Right? Zephyrs is breeze. Right? BREEZE, breeze. Was hardly fair game for the red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. Right? So this duffer is basically personification for Mr. Pneumonia. Right? And this mite of a little woman with blood thinned by California zephyrs. Whom is this referring to? This is referring to John C. Because it says, but John C he smote. Right? Smote is basically hit, H-I-T, hit. Right? So if I combine the first two sentences together, the first two sentences are implying that John C is the person whose blood was thinned by California zephyrs. So from this paragraph, I can kind of identify that it was John C who was from California. Right? So based on the third paragraph, right? Based on the third paragraph, I can say that John C was from California. Right? Based on the third paragraph. So now if I have a look at that question, right? Now if I have a look at that question, which says Sue was from California and John C was from Maine. Now I can say that this is false. Right? Now I can say that this is false. cannot be determined is also very close over here, right? Because from the first paragraph, we cannot determine, right? So when I say false, when I say that John C was from California, I'm not saying it from the first paragraph, right? Please note that from the first paragraph, the answer is cannot be determined, right? But I'm getting this from the third paragraph, right? The third paragraph is about California. It's about John C. So I can assume that John C is from California. But nonetheless, it's a very close call over here, right? So even those of you who marked cannot be determined, I would say that's okay, right? Because it was very close over here, right? But if I had to mark an answer, I would have marked this false based on the third paragraph, not on the first paragraph, right? Based on the third paragraph. But otherwise, as I said, even those of you marked cannot be determined, fair enough, right? Fair enough, because that is what the first paragraph told us, that it cannot be determined. The fifth one, Sue and John C started the studio as they shared many common interests. This is true, right? This is true. It's there in the first part of the passage, right? This is true. So this is how these five options go. The first one is cannot be determined, second false, third true, fourth false or cannot be determined, fifth one is true. Those of you who got all five correct, right? I would say that is very good, right? I think there were only one or two of you who got all five correct, right? But that's very good. Those of you got all five correct. And when I say even if five correct, even if you marked cannot be determined for the fourth one, I'm accepting that as right. Okay. Okay. Next question. What is the central idea of this passage? Right? What is the central idea of this passage? The central idea is there are two friends, right? One of them not well, right? There are two friends, they're good friends. One of them is not well. Chances of survival are low, and the other friend wants to help. This is the central idea, right? This is the central idea. Whenever you have a question on central idea, as far as possible, try to encompass all the major features of the passage, right? We'll discuss this separately also when we do types of questions, right? But for now, I'm looking at an answer option, or I'm looking for an answer option that covers all the major features of the passage. So the major features of the passage is there are two good friends. One of them is not well. Chances are that she will not live for a long time, and the other friend wants to help. So that is what the central idea of the passage is. What is the tone of the passage? The tone of the passage is slightly sad, right? It's a slightly sad tone, right? It's a kind of depressing tone because one person is not well, she's not expected to live, she's trying to give up, etc. But the other person is trying to remain positive. So on the whole, what I would say is that the tone is sad. In fact, there is another answer that would be correct over here, which would be that the tone is narrative. What does narrative mean? Narrative is basically a sequence of events, right? So there's a sequence of events that has been defined over here. Okay, one of you has a question, should we explain more or just the main points? See, when the question is what is the central idea, it is just the very main points that you explain. The thumb rule here is whenever you have been asked for the central idea, ideally the central idea should fit into one or a maximum of two sentences, right? One or a maximum of two sentences. That is what the central idea should fit in. Right? So to the extent that you can fit it in one or two sentences, mention the main points, but nothing beyond that, no details. Right? In central idea, we don't mention details. Right? Whenever it is about the central idea. Tone is sad, the tone is narrative. Right? The tone is sad or narrative. In our next class on reading comprehension, right? When we have our next class on reading comprehension, the topic that we will discuss is types of questions. Right? That is, what are the various question types that you can come across in reading comprehension. Right? There we will specifically discuss about the concept of central idea, and we will discuss about the tone-based questions also. Right? So both these concepts will take up in the session where we discuss types of questions. Right? Types of questions is something important. In fact, our next two sessions will be types of questions. Right, sure. There I'll discuss these concepts in more detail, the concept of central idea especially, and the concept of tone. Okay. Can you predict what happens next in the story? Now, this is a very interesting question. Right? Can you predict what happens next in the story? Remember one thing, reading comprehension, no matter which question it is, answer based only on the information given in the passage. Right? This is important. Right? The answer that you give, that answer has to be based only on the information given in the passage, absolutely no other information. What I'm saying is that this passage could be something that some of you have read earlier. Right? This passage has come from the last leaf. Right? The source of this passage is Last Leaf by O. Henry. Right? It's mentioned towards the end of the passage. Right? It's mentioned here. O. Henry, this is the author. Last Leaf is the name of the work. Right? It's the name of the book. Right? I'm sorry, the name of the story. Right? So some of you might have read the Last Leaf before. But even if you had read the Last Leaf before, even if you know exactly what happens, that a leaf is going to get painted on the tree, right? Such that it looks like a leaf on the tree. Even if you know exactly what has happened next in the story, but if it is not given in the passage, you cannot use that as the answer. Right? I repeat, reading comprehension is only from the perspective of what the author has written. Right? And based on what the author has written, the answer to this question, can you predict what happens next in the story? The only possible answer to this question is that Shu will do something to try to save Johnsy. This is all I can predict. Right? Even if I have read the story, even if I know exactly what is going to happen, I can answer only on the basis of what has been given to me in the question. And based on what's given to me in the question, I know that Shu is concerned. I know that Shu does not wish her friend to die. Right? So all I can answer is Shu will do something to try to save Johnsy. Right? That is all that can be arrived at. Right? So this is what the answer is going to be, nothing more specific. Right? We don't guess, we don't use our prior knowledge, we only go as per what has been written in the passage. Right? So that is the basic philosophy of reading comprehension. Right? That is the basic philosophy of reading comprehension that we will use in all our sessions. Right? In all our sessions. But I repeat, this is very important that you do not use outside information. Right? Sometimes it happens. Right? Just hear this carefully, all of you. Sometimes it happens that in reading comprehension, you have some information that is actually factually wrong. Right? You know that is wrong, the information that has been given in the passage. But if you have to answer a question based on that, you have to answer based on what has been written in the passage, not based on what you know as true. So, for example, right, I'm just taking a hypothetical example. Even if there is a passage which is based on the concept that Antarctica, right, Antarctica is a very warm place and the climate there is such that the temperatures are very high. Right? In Antarctica, the temperatures are very high. If that is what the passage says, then that is how you answer the questions. Why? Because reading comprehension is not a test of general knowledge. Right? Reading comprehension is not a test of general knowledge. Reading comprehension is only a test of how well you are able to understand what the author has written. So if the author says that Antarctica is not a cold place, if the author says that Antarctica is a warm place, that is what you accept and that is how you answer the questions. Right? So that's the basic philosophy of reading comprehension. You go only as per what's written in the passage. Okay, fair enough. In case there are any doubts here, please ask, else I'll move on to the next concept. Right? But if you have any doubts in whatever we have discussed here, please feel free to ask. Right? In case there are any doubts, right? I'll clarify. Okay, third paragraph one more time. Just a minute. The third paragraph is where I got the fact that John C is from California, right? See, here it says Mr. Pneumonia was not what you would call a chivalric old gentleman, right? Was not what you would call a chivalric old gentleman. A mite of a little woman, right? Mite refers to a small creature, right? So that term has been used figuratively over here. A mite of a little woman with blood thinned by California zephyrs. Zephyr is basically a slight wind, right? It's a breeze, right? It's a slight wind. So a mite of a little woman with blood thinned by California zephyrs was hardly fair game for the red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. Red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. Right? This is referring to Mr. Pneumonia. Right? And when I say Mr. Pneumonia, we are basically talking about the disease that affected the woman. Right? Pneumonia was the disease. Here, the author has just personified the disease by calling it Mr. Pneumonia. Right? And again, there is personification taking place over here where it says red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. Right? Duffer is a word that we generally use for a person. Right? So here that person is the disease. Right? So it says was hardly fair game. What does fair game mean? Fair game means that when there is a competition, right? If both the sides are equally good, then it is known as a fair game. But here it says that this woman was hardly fair game. That means that she was not fair game. That means that Mr. Pneumonia was much stronger than the woman. Right? And why was Pneumonia stronger than the woman? Because in case of the woman, it says that blood thinned by California zephyrs. So here I can assume that this woman has come from California, that this woman is from California. Why? Because only if she's from California can I say that blood thinned by California zephyrs. Right? So I can here safely say that this woman is from California. And which women are we talking about? We are talking about John C. Right? Because that is what it says in the next sentence using the word but. Right? Why are they using the word but? It says that the woman was hardly fair game for Mr. Pneumonia. But still, John C. he smote. Right? Smote means hit or affected. Right? Hit or affected. That is smote. But still, John C. got affected by pneumonia. John C. fell ill from pneumonia. And because this context is of a woman who's come from California, right? We can safely say that John C. is the one who is from California. Right? That is what the third paragraph was about. If we have a look at the language of the third paragraph, the language of the third paragraph is not direct. It's not literal language, it is figurative language. Figurative language is again something that we'll discuss in one of our RC classes, right? Where we discuss the concept of figures of speech and figurative language. So we'll discuss more of personification, etc., etc. So basically in this paragraph, they have personified pneumonia as a person who affects John C. And John C. is the person who comes from California. Right? So that is what this third paragraph said. Any other doubts, anyone? Please ask. Right? I don't mind explaining twice, thrice. The main thing is you should be clear about everything that we're discussing in class. Right? Everything that we're discussing in class. Okay. Now, let's continue with our main topic. The topic was techniques to become an effective reader. Right? 2 we have already discussed. Focus more on ideas than on facts and use a pointer. Right? So 2 we have already discussed. Now let's talk about the third one. Okay. Now let's talk about the third one. The third is avoid vocalization. Okay. The third technique is avoid vocalization. Okay. Avoid vocalization. That is the third technique. Now, what is vocalization? Right? Let's understand that. Vocalization is the practice of reading the words aloud. Right? Vocalization is the practice of reading the words aloud. So basically what I'm saying is it is the practice of speaking while reading. Right? It is the practice of speaking while reading. Basically, what is also known as reading aloud. Right? Reading aloud. That is what vocalization is. A lot of us do this. Right? A lot of us do this. Right? A lot of us vocalize when we read. Why people vocalize when they read is because in a lot of cases, right? In a lot of cases, vocalization improves comprehension. Right? Why a lot of people vocalize, that is why a lot of people read aloud, is because vocalization, yes, does improve comprehension. A lot of us, in fact, even when I was in school, right? Even when I was in school, I was taught that if you are not able to understand what has been written, read it aloud, comprehension will improve. And believe me, that happens. And that happens for a lot of people. Right? So in a lot of cases, vocalization improves comprehension. But at the same time, right? But at the same time, what happens is vocalization reduces reading speed. Okay? Vocalization reduces reading speed. So basically, there is a plus point that it improves comprehension, but there's a minus point also that vocalization reduces reading speed. In the exam, in some cases, you'll be required to read very, very fast. Right? You'll be required to read very, very fast. Those exams where you're required to read a passage very fast, chances are you might not complete the passage if you vocalize. Right? So if you practice vocalization or if you indulge in vocalization, chances are you will not be able to read the passage in the time that is available to you, which is why I'm saying avoid vocalization. That is, to the best extent possible, try to reduce vocalization. That is what I'm saying. Right? Yes, it should not be at the expense of comprehension. Right? Comprehension is important, but at the same time, try to reduce vocalization as much as you can, because eventually vocalization is going to affect the reading speed negatively. Right? Eventually, that is going to happen. So, to the best extent possible, try to avoid vocalization. Right? To the best extent possible. Right? Avoid vocalization. It might take you 2 months, it might take you 3 months, it could even take you 4 months to reduce vocalization. Right? I'm talking about those people who do vocalize, right? Those students who do vocalize. Doesn't matter, you still have a lot of time left to go for the exam. Right? You still have around 8-9 months left to go for the exam. So you have a lot of time, but just try reducing vocalization. Right? Just try reducing vocalization. Right? So avoid vocalization. The fourth technique is reduce regression. Right? Reduce regression. As far as possible, try to reduce regression. Let's see what regression is about. Right? Let's see what regression is about. Regression in the context of reading is the practice of reading a part of the passage again, right? Regression in the context of reading is the practice of reading a part of the passage again. So, in simple words, regression is defined as rereading. Right? I'm talking about this from the context of reading comprehension. Right? Regression has other meanings also in a general context. But right now, from the perspective of reading comprehension, regression is defined as the practice of rereading. Can anyone tell me what is the opposite of regress or what is the opposite of regression? Just type it in the chat box. Anyone? What is regress the opposite of? Just type it in the chat box if anyone knows the answer. Regression or regress is the opposite of which word? Ritik, correct. Very good. Regression is the opposite of progression. Right? So regress is basically the opposite of progress. Progress means to move ahead. Regress means to move back. Right? Progress means to move ahead and regress means to move back. So in the context of reading, regression means when you go back to what you have already read earlier and you read it again. Right? So that is what regression is. It is the opposite of progression. Progression is moving ahead, regression is going backwards. Right? Regression is undesirable. Right? Regression is undesirable. Why? For the simple reason that you waste time while reading. Right? That is why it is undesirable. Right? Because you are spending time doing something that you have already spent time on. Right? That is why regression is avoidable. But at the same time, right? But at the same time, in some cases, you might have to go back to what you have read earlier, either because it was difficult to understand or you have to answer a particular question. Right? Or you have to answer a particular question. So in some cases, it becomes unavoidable. So don't compromise on accuracy or don't compromise on comprehension. But at the same time, to the best extent possible, while practicing over the next few months, try to reduce regression as much as possible. Right? As much as possible. Right? So what I'm saying is sometimes regression is unavoidable. Right? Sometimes. And what are those sometimes? When the context is very difficult to understand or you have to answer a question and when there are very close answer options, so you might have to go back to the passage. Right? So sometimes it is unavoidable, but to the best extent possible, just like vocalization, try to reduce regression because regression will take time. And when you read something again and again, it's going to take time. Right? So to the best extent possible, reduce regression. So this is the fourth aspect that you need to keep in mind. Right? The third one was vocalization. The fourth one is regression. Try to reduce both of these because you want to, right? Because you want to complete the passage as quickly as possible. Reducing vocalization and regression is something that will happen with time. It will not happen in 10 days. It will not happen in 15 days. Maybe it will take 2 months, 3 months, in some cases, even 4 or 5 months. Doesn't matter. You still have a lot of time left for the exam, right? You still have a lot of time left for the exam, right? Try focusing on reducing regression and vocalization, right? Okay. Now let's do one exercise here. Right? Let's do one small exercise here. Let's come to the next passage. Right? Let's come to the next passage. Okay, before I come to the next passage, right? Before I come to the next passage, sorry, I missed out on one thing. In this passage that we did, the last leaf, right? The passage that we just discussed, passage 1, I had asked you to see how much time you had taken. Right? I had asked you to see how much time you had taken to read the passage. Now, let's say that some of you, right? Let's say that some of you took Okay, let's say 4.5 minutes, or let's say that some of you took 5 minutes to read the passage, right? Let's say you took 5 minutes to read the passage. The word count is given over here, right? The word count is given over here. So in this passage, there were 656 words, right? In this passage, there were 656 words. So if you took 5 minutes to read the passage, right? What is your reading speed? Right? It is 656 divided by 5, right? So it is approximately, right? It is approximately 130 words per minute, right? WPM is words per minute. So reading speed is approximately 130 words per minute. For a passage of this difficulty level, right? This passage was not very easy to understand, right? This was a difficult passage. The language used was difficult. There were some difficult words. There was some figurative language used. So on the whole, this was not a very easy passage to read. For a passage of this kind in the exam, your target reading speed should be 218. When I say target reading speed of 218, it is for this particular passage. Your target reading speed will change depending upon the passage. In an easier passage, your target speed is expected to be higher. In a difficult passage, your target reading speed is supposed to be lower, and this was a difficult passage, right? So for this passage, it was required to be 218 words per minute. I just hope all of you kept time of how much time you took to read the passage. So calculate your reading speed. So if someone's reading speed is 130 words per minute, it basically tells that person how much improvement is required. Right? So those of you who read it in 5 minutes, read it at 130 words per minute, that means that your reading speed needs to go up from 130 words per minute to 218 words per minute. Reading speed improves gradually, right? I cannot tell myself that from tomorrow I'll start reading at 250 or 300 words per minute. It does not work that way. Reading speed will only improve with practice. Don't worry, whatever your reading speed was right now, it doesn't matter at this point. So at this point, I'll even go to the extent of saying that even if there was someone who was able to read only 75 words per minute, right? Who was able to read at only 75 words per minute, doesn't matter. That is what I'm saying is, if there were some of you who took around 8 to 9 minutes for reading, doesn't matter. The only thing is you have to be aware that you have to move up from 75 words per minute to 200 words per minute for a passage of this kind. Right? That was the basic purpose of asking you to check how much time you took. I repeat, reading speed does not happen overnight. Right? It's not an overnight phenomena. It requires a lot of dedicated practice. Right? It might take you 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. It might even take you 5 months. But the thing is, today you have time. Right? You have a lot of time left for the exam. Right? So you have to bridge this gap. Right? You have to bridge this gap. Right? So this is why I had asked you to notice how much time you took. Okay. Now, let's do another exercise. Let's do the next passage as well. Right? Let's do the next passage as well. See, this is what we discussed. This is what we have discussed. No vocalization, that is reduce it, and no unnecessary regression. Please note here again it says unnecessary, because as I mentioned, in some cases it becomes necessary, right? It is required in some cases. So no unnecessary regression. So this was the fourth point that we discussed, right? Our fourth point. Okay, now very quickly, let's do an exercise. What we'll do is this exercise, we will do in a different manner, right? And this is just an analysis exercise for the time being, right? This is just an analysis exercise. Passage 2, right? Passage 2. This passage, if it were to be asked in the exam, right? If this passage were to be asked in the exam you would have had around 3 minutes to read the passage, right? You would have had around 3 minutes to read the passage and another 2 minutes to answer the questions, right? So what I wanted to do is take 5 minutes, right? Take exactly 5 minutes, right? From when I ask you to start, take exactly 5 minutes. Read the passage in 3 minutes and try to answer the questions as far as possible without regression. Right? As far as possible without regression. Right? This is just an analysis exercise. Even if you get only half the questions right, it doesn't matter. You're just doing an analysis right now. Because right now we have to know where we stand. Right? So that is what we are doing right now. Right? So take 5 minutes, 3 minutes to read the passage and 2 minutes to answer the questions. Right? There are 7 questions. Right? There are 7 questions at the end. Right? I'll just show you those 7 questions. Right? There are 7 questions at the end. The first 5 questions, if I'm not wrong, are true and false questions. Right? The first 5 questions are true and false questions, just like we did in the previous passage. And then there are another 2 questions. This is the next one, and this is the next one. Right? So there are 7 questions, 5 of which are true and false. Right? These are the true and false questions. Okay, your time starts now. Right? Your time starts now. Take exactly 5 minutes. See what is the best that you can do. Right? At the end of 5 minutes, I'll discuss what is a desirable outcome. Right? Right now, just take 5 minutes. See what is the best that you can do. I'll discuss the answers exactly after 5 minutes. You might not be able to answer all the questions. Doesn't matter. Just try the best that you can. Okay, 2 more minutes, then we'll start discussing. 2 more minutes. Janvi, the third one is correct. Okay, let's discuss this. All of you, let's discuss this. Right, so that was around 5.5 odd minutes. Right, let's discuss this. The first one says the plot of the movie The Maltese Falcon is not its main attraction. This is true. Right, this is true. That the plot of the movie is not its main attraction. Where am I getting this from? I'm getting this from here. It says the plot is the last thing you think of about the Maltese Falcon, right? So the plot is not the main attraction, right? So that one is true. The second one says Bogart, who plays Sam Spade, was a cold and ruthless man. Now this is a very interesting option, the way it has been framed, right? All of you just understand this. It says Bogart, who plays Sam Spade, was a cold and ruthless man. See, Bogart, as per this option, is the person who is playing Sam Spade. Please note, it was not Bogart who was cold and ruthless. It is this character that was cold and ruthless. Right? So Sam Spade was a cold and ruthless man. Right? And who is Sam Spade? Sam Spade is a character. So that character was cold and ruthless. The person who played that character, I cannot say that he was cold and ruthless. Right? I cannot say that the actor was cold and ruthless. It was the character that was cold and ruthless. Right? So the second one is false because I have to choose between true and false. Third one says the Maltese Falcon broke some conventional mode of filmmaking. This is true. Right? This is true. It broke some conventional mode. Where do I know this from? I know this from somewhere over here. It says it fought the tendency of these two for the studio to pine for a happy ending. So generally, maybe stories have a happy ending, but in this case, it did not have a happy ending. And they fought the tendency to pine for. To pine for means to support. Right? So they fought the tendency to support a happy ending. Right? So this did not have a happy ending. So it broke some conventional mode of filmmaking. Right? That is why they had to fight it. Right? So this is true. The fourth one, people find some vulnerability in Sam Spade's hardened demeanor. This is also true. Right? This is also true. Right? This is also true. Where do I know that they find some vulnerability? I think it's there in the third paragraph. No, yeah, this paragraph, where it says it conceals old wounds and broken dreams, etc. Right? So it conceals old wounds, there are broken dreams, etc. So that maybe that person is not as insensitive as he has been shown. Right? So there is some vulnerability. Right? He is not completely hardened. There is some vulnerability. Fifth one says John Huston managed to convince Warner Brothers to let the movie break away with the tradition of a happy ending. We have just discussed this. This is valid. Right? This is valid. Right? This is valid. This is where I'm getting it from. Right? For the tendency for a happy ending. Right? So this is valid. So this is true. So except for the second one, the others are true. The next one, what best describes the style of the author in the passage? It is analytical. Why is it analytical? Because the author analyzes the movie. Right? The author analyzes the movie. It is not critical. Critical is something that generally involves criticism. Right? There are other meanings of critical as well, but generally it involves criticism. Expository means very detailed. Right? Very detailed. And generally in case of expository, it's a single concept that is discussed. Right? So it's not expository, analytical is a better option. This concept is asking us for the style of the author. In one of our later classes, we will be discussing this question type separately, right? We will discuss style-based questions. As I said, our next two classes are based on question types, right? So style-based questions is one of the questions there. Next, so we'll discuss all these terms in a lot more detail. And finally, the last question, which of the following would the author most likely agree with? See, first option is not correct. It says it is impossible to portray a movie. This passage is not about movies in general. This passage is about one specific movie. So this is not correct. Warner Brothers knew that the Maltese Falcon was about the character, not the story. It is not Warner Brothers who knew. It was Houston who knew. Right? If you have a look at the passage, right? If you have a look at the passage, John Houston, this person knew, and that it was not about the story but about the character. It was not Warner Brothers. Right? So that is why the second option is not correct. Third one says Hammett wanted his readers to view Spade as a maverick character. This is correct. The fourth one says earned huge profits. Nothing is discussed about profits, and that is out of scope. Option 3 is the best option. I agree, a lot of you might not have gotten time to understand the passage in detail, but why I did this passage right now in this time limit is because when you actually take the exam, this is how much time you are going to have to attempt a passage of this length and this difficulty level. At this point in time, right? At this point in time, out of the 7 questions, right? At this point in time, out of 7 questions, right? 5 true and false questions and 2 regular questions. Those of you who got 3 out of 7 questions right, right? Those of you who got 3 out of 7 questions right, I'll say that is pretty good, right? That's very good at this point in time. Right? Those of you who got 3 out of 7 questions right. Anything more than 3 out of 7, right? If some of you got 4 or 5 questions right, I would say that is excellent. Right? But at this point in time, when we still have around 10 months to go for the exam, right? And we are just beginning our preparation, even 3 out of 7 questions right in 5 minutes is not a bad score. Right? It's not a bad score. So if some of you got only 2 out of 7, even that's not very bad, but 3 out of 7 would have been better. Right? It would have been appropriate at this point in time. Right? But at the end of these 10 months, right, when you actually take the exam, in these 5 minutes, you should be getting at least 5 to 6 questions right. Right? At least 5 to 6 questions right, if not all 7 questions. Right? At least 5 to 6 questions right. So don't worry what your current performance in these passages is. As I said, this is basically about self-awareness, right? We are in our first session today, and we haven't discussed a lot of concepts till now. And this is just a self-awareness exercise to understand where exactly it is that you stand at this point in time. Right? That is what this entire exercise is about. Okay. Now, very quickly, let's come to the last concept. Right? Let's come to the last concept. So we have discussed 4 techniques till now. As I had said, there are 5. Right? We have discussed 4 techniques till now. Let's talk about the 5th one. Right? Let's talk about the 5th one. The 5th technique is anticipation. Right? The 5th technique is anticipation. Right? The 5th technique is anticipation. Please understand what this means. An effective reader, see, all of this is from the perspective of an effective reader, right? An effective reader should be able to anticipate the author's discussion. That is both his or her tone and narration. Right? An effective reader is a reader who is able to anticipate in advance based on something that has been read. So a reader is able to anticipate what else the author is going to discuss. Right? And an effective reader should be able to anticipate both the author's tone. When I say tone, is it a positive tone? Is it a negative tone? Like, for example, in that passage on the last leaf, right? It was kind of a negative tone, right? It was a sad, depressing kind of tone, right? So an effective reader should be able to appreciate the author's tone and narration as well. When I say narration, what I mean is, what is the author discussing? Right? So in what direction is the author going? So if he has made 1 or 2 sentences, what is his next sentence likely to be? So to a certain extent, an effective reader should be able to anticipate, right? To a certain extent. No one can completely anticipate what a person is seeing for the first time, right? No one can do that. But to a certain extent, based on what you have read. So if you have read the first 2 lines of a paragraph or 3 lines of a paragraph, you should be able to anticipate what comes next. So to a certain extent, anticipation should happen. Right? To a certain extent, anticipation should happen. Please make a note here. Anticipation. This is a very important concept, right? From the perspective of an MBA entrance exam. Why I'm saying this is because when you actually join the MBA program, right? If you have friends who are doing an MBA, ask them, right? Especially those of them who are doing it from a very good institute, right? Ask them. When you do an MBA program on a daily basis, you are expected to read a lot of material. It could be theory, it could be case studies, it could be anything, right? You are expected to read a lot. In some cases, you are even expected to read around 70 to 80 pages daily, right? In some instances. If you are not able to anticipate what is written, if you have to read each and every sentence to understand what the author wants to say, chances are you will not be able to read those 70, 80 pages, right? Or even if it is 50 pages or 40 pages in a day. And when I say in a day, it is after your classes. So it is in 4 or 5 hours, right? So it's in 4 or 5 hours. So anticipation is something that is taken very, very seriously, right? Which is why we will devote an entire session to this. Just make a note. We will have a session based on the concept of para completion, right? This is also known as text completion, which is where we discuss anticipation in a lot of detail, right? In a lot of detail. As I said, today I'm just mentioning what the important aspects of an effective reader are, right? But in our session on para completion, we will take this up in a lot of detail. For now, let's do one thing. Let's do one last exercise, right? Let's do one last exercise. In the sheet, I want you to move to passage 4. Okay? I want you to move to passage 4 in the sheet. I'll just display it on the screen also. This is passage 4. Okay? This is passage 4. You will notice that in this passage, in certain paragraphs, there is a blank that is given. So for example, in the first paragraph, right? In the first paragraph, I'm sorry, this is not the first paragraph. This is the first paragraph. And this is passage 4. So in the first paragraph, there is a blank, and this blank says question 25. So I'll just tell you what you need to do in this passage. For question 25, you need to go to where the question is given. Right? The question is given after the passage. This is question 25. Right? This is question 25. And you have 4 options here. Right? So each question has 4 options. Question 25 has 4 options. So what you do is, out of these 4 options, you try to anticipate which sentence is the best fit in this blank. So basically, it is a fill in the blanks exercise. Right? It is a fill in the blanks exercise. Just that this is not a vocabulary exercise. This is a comprehension exercise. So for the 25th question, from those 4 options, you have to fit in one sentence over here. That is, out of those 4 options, identify which the best option is over here. Similarly, when you come to the 26th question, right? When you come to the 26th question, which is there in the 3rd paragraph, again there is a blank over here. So what do you do this for this blank? You again go to the 26th question. Right? The 26th question again will have 4 options. These are the 4 options of the 26th question. And these are the 4 options. You see which of the 4 options best fits into the blank. So basically what I'm asking you to do is you have to anticipate what fits in the blank. Right? There are 5 questions, 25, 26, 27, right? 28 and 29. Right? These are the 5 questions. Right? So question 25 to 29. Just give it a try. Just anticipate what fits into the blank. Right? Just give it a try. Take your time. There's no hurry for this. Take 5 minutes if you want, take 10 minutes if you want, right? But in around 8 to 10 minutes, you should be able to do it very well, right? So take your time, just fill in the blanks, right? The questions are at the end, just fill in the blanks. What I'll do is I'll display the questions over here, right? One by one, right? Otherwise, you can check it on your screens also, right? The sheet that I've sent. Once you are done, just type in the answers. Anubi 25th is correct. Ritik 25th is correct. Akshit 25th correct. Janvi also correct. Good. Ujjwal 25th correct. Good. Shreya 25th different answer. 26th different answer. Ritika 25th is correct. Akshit 26th is a different answer. 26 different answer. Akshit. Ujjwal different answer. 26th different answer. Ujjwal. Ritika correct. 26th correct. Ritika. Ritik different answer. Janvi different answer. 26th. Anubi different answer. 26th. Akshit different answer 26. Ritik different answer 26. In question 26, I want all of you to do two things. And those of you have attempted question 26. Anubhi, correct. 26 is correct. And Ritik, 26 is correct. Look at the tense as well as the tone of the author. And you will get the answer. Ritik, correct. Anubhi, correct. In question 26, you will get the answer if you notice the tense and the tone of the author. Akshit, correct. 26, correct. Janvi, different answer. Ujjwal, different answer. So maybe there are two options that you have given. For which question? There are two options that you have mentioned, 4 and 3. Twenty-sixth, the first option that you have mentioned is correct. The first one is correct, the one that you have mentioned. January 27 is correct. Good. In question 27, all of you might notice that all the answer options seem to be appropriate. In question 27, go with the option that most agrees with the overall idea discussed in that paragraph. Ritika, correct. 27. Shreya, different answer. Ritik, different answer. Go with the overall discussion of that paragraph. Ask yourself, what is the overall idea? Akshit, different answer. Read that paragraph. Ask yourself, what is this paragraph discussing? What is the overall concept? And match that with the answer options in question 27. Ritika, 28th is a different answer. Akshit, which question is that? The answer to which you gave? Anubi, different answer. Akshit, correct. Good. Correct. Okay, take 2 more minutes, all of you will then discuss. Ritik, correct. Good. 27th is correct, Ritik. Janvi, different answer. Ujjwal, correct. 27. Different answer, Janvi, for the 28th one. Anubi, correct. 27th, good. Sumedh, correct, good. 27th. Janvi, 28th is correct. Ritika, different answers for the last two. Ujjwal, 28th is correct. Anubi, different answer for the 28th one. Janvi, different answer. 29th, different answer. Sumedh, different answer. 28th question. Shreya, 29th is correct. 28th is a different answer. 29th is correct. Okay, take a minute more. We'll then discuss. Janvi, different answer. 28th. I'm sorry, 29th, different answer, Janvi. Shreya, 28th is correct. Good. Ritika, different answer. 29th. Janvi, 29th is correct. Good. Ujjwal, different answer. 29th. Sumedh, 28th is correct. Okay, let's discuss this. Okay, question 25 first. Question 25, most of you got correct. It says these scams took in millions of dollars dash, that is until September 30, 2004. Right, and then it says that was the day when the FBI agents came into my office. Right, so I have to look for something that will agree with that is still until September 30, 2004. So question 25, the answer is option 2. Right, question 25, the answer is option 2. Option 2 says no matter how much money we made or how fetched the bill was far-fetched, I never got caught. Then it says that is until so and so date. And after that it says that the FBI agents came. So after that date or on that date I got caught. But till that date, no matter how much money we made, we or I never got caught. Right. So question 25, I guess most of you got correct. Right. Question 25, most of you got correct. Now let's have a look at question 26. On question 26, I wanted to notice a couple of things. Number one, question 26 is describing what these people used to do to fool people, right? What this person used to do to fool people. It says we told them that they could earn a minimum of $30,000 to $35,000 per machine each year, right? And this is how they used to fool people. So they used to fool people by telling them that they could earn this much money. And then it says we sold them at huge markups, right? So they sold the machines at a very, very high price by telling the people that they could earn so much money from the machines. Right? And this is how they used to fool people. So if this is how they used to fool people, it means that they were doing something negative. Right? It means that they were doing something negative. So now if I have a look at the answer options. Option 3 says these machines created a revolution in the tech industry. This cannot be the answer. Why? Because if they actually created a revolution, it means something good was happening because of the machines. But what is the context of the passage? The context is how this person made a fool of other people. So he could not have cheated people by creating a revolution. Right? He could have cheated people if something wrong was happening, which is why the answer is option 4. This was pure baloney. What does baloney mean? Baloney means nonsense. Right? This was pure nonsense. The machines did not generate anything close to that kind of income. What kind of income? The amount is given, right? $30,000 to $35,000 per year. Right? So this was pure nonsense. It did not generate anything close to that. Another thing I wanted to notice is if you have a look at the entire discussion, if you look at the entire discussion is in the past tense. And the particular scam in my office was so and so. We had been running TV ads, right? Could use these kiosks, right? Was, right? Could earn. Everything is in the past tense, which is why if you have a look at the answer options now, options 1 and 2 cannot be the answers. Why? Because option 1 is present tense, option 2 is also present tense. Right? So options 1 and 2 do not agree with the language grammar. Option 4 is in the past tense and it is negative as well. Okay? That is how the answer is option 4. Now, question 27. Right? This is question 27. You will notice that here all the answer options are kind of appropriate. Right? First one talks about people. Second one talks about FBI agent, which is yes discussed. Mario Puzo is also relevant to the context. Right? And who after all doesn't love Don Vito Corleone, right? Even this is appropriate. So now what I do is I try to understand what the main idea of that paragraph is. Right? What the main idea of that paragraph is. The first one says the agents gathered everyone in a big open area. Right? It's talking about dozens of salespersons, right? And started calling the names of the employees. It talks about each worker. Right. So essentially, this paragraph is about the people who were mentioned, who were present in that place. Right. Yes, it talks about a ringtone from The Godfather. Yes, it talks about that. Right. It talks about the agents. But on the whole, this passage is about the people. It is about the employees who were present in that room, which is why the best option becomes the first option. Right. Becomes the first option, best option. If you recall, in the last class, I had mentioned that it is not about the right or the wrong answer. It is about the most appropriate option. Ruby, I didn't get what a doubt is. Fill the room often used for laughing. Just clarify your doubt. I didn't understand what the doubt was. Okay. So the best option here is the first option. The other options are not necessarily wrong, right? The other options are not necessarily wrong, but the first option is the best option. Why? Because that deals with the main idea of the paragraph. Question 28, I guess this was a simple question, right? Not a lot of you got it correct in the first go, but on the whole, if you ask me, this was a simple question. Let's have a look at where 28 is given. Right? Let's have a look at where 28 is given here. It says you would be amazed at how many doctors, lawyers, engineers, and college professors I have made a fool of. Right? Ripped off is made a fool of. Right? So this person is saying that I have been able to cheat people across professions. Right? I have been able to cheat people across professions. I have been able to cheat doctors, lawyers, engineers, college professors. That is what this paragraph says. And then there is a sentence after this. So the previous sentence says that I have been able to cheat a lot of people from different professions. So the best option becomes option 3 because of 2 reasons. The first reason why option 3 is correct is because it says the bottom line is. And if you have a look at that question is in the last sentence of the paragraph. Right? If you have a look at question 28, just notice it's the last sentence of a paragraph. So if it's the last sentence of a paragraph, it is the concluding sentence. So I can definitely say the bottom line is. And then it says fraud is a crime that can happen to anyone. Why am I saying happen to anyone? Because that is what the previous sentence says. That this person has been able to fool people from a lot of professions. Right? So it can happen to anyone. Option 1 is not completely wrong. Right? There were a lot of you who marked option 1. Option 1 is not completely wrong. It says once I have gotten you into this condition, it doesn't matter how smart or dumb you are. Option 3 is better. Right? It's better because it says bottom line and it says can happen to anyone. Had option 3 not been there, option 1 is next best. But option 3 is better than option 1. The other options are not appropriate. Option 2 says the answer is. Right? There is no question that is asked. Right? Option 4 is also not appropriate. So options 1 and 3 were close. But option 3, a much better option than the first option. Right? A much better option than the first option. Last question. Right? Last question, question 29. Let's see what's written here. It says, I'll tell you so you can recognize and avoid the techniques I used. Then it says dash. Then it says, if I were still in the game, I would tell you only one thing, you and I are going to make a lot of money together. It says, if I were still in the game. What does this mean? That I am no longer in the game. Right? Only then can I say if I were still doing this. Right? I can say that only if I am now not doing it. Right? Only now if I am not doing it. Only then can I say that. Which is why for question 29. Right? For question 29, the answer is option 2. Option 2 says I can do this because I am out of the game now. Right? I can do this because I am out of the game now. So it clearly says that I am no longer in the game. I am out of the game now. So I can do this because I am out of the game now. If I was still in the game, I would tell you only one thing. Right? So that is how question 29 turns out. The other options, yes, were not very wrong, but option 2 is the best option because it clearly says that I am out of the game now. Those of you who got 3 out of 5 questions correct, right? Those of you who got 3 out of 5 questions correct, I would say that is good, right? Either in the first go or in your second guess. Those of you who got 3 out of 5 questions, I would say that is not bad, right? Because anticipation, the theory of this, we haven't discussed yet, right? This was just again a self-awareness exercise, right? So even 3 out of 5 at this point in time is not bad. Those of you who got 4 out of 5 or by chance 5 out of 5 in the first or second guess, I would say that is outstanding, that is excellent. Right? But even 3 out of 5 is not a bad score here. Right? Even 3 out of 5 is not a bad score over here right now. Let's do one thing. Let's stop here for the day. So today what we have done is we have discussed 5 concepts that help you become an effective reader. The first one was focus on idea, not on facts. That is, focus more on ideas than on facts. The next one was using pointers. That is hand motions. Third one was reducing vocalization. Fourth one was reducing regression. And the fifth one is anticipation. As I said, each one of these we will take up in our other classes as well. Right? But today was an introductory class. So at the outset, you know what the good reading techniques are. There were 5 passages in this sheet. Right? We have done 3 passages. Right? Please try the other 2 passages. Right? We have run out of time, so I'm not doing the remaining 2 passages. Please try the remaining 2 passages. I'll send out the answers also. Right? I'll mention the answers on the group. Right? Any doubts that you have regarding any one of these remaining 2 passages, I'll take it up in the next class. Right? Thanks a lot. Thanks.